You know, sometimes when we pray for a problem, sometimes the situation changes. Sometimes our outlook on the situation changes, and it allows us to focus more on Him and see what the purpose for the pain was or is.
Just be faithful and praise your way through the pain, because if we can praise God in those times when we're the most hurt, He is the most glorified.
The only difference between my family and whoever's watching is that we're actually behind the microphone. Our families live through the same thing that all the viewers are experiencing.
Life is not always easy, and we as Christians will sometimes suffer. But with God, He will lead you through your journey from pain to praise.
Life moves at a fast pace. Everybody has challenges. But God is on the move. From Pittsburgh to Nashville, join me on the journey on today's life, sharing stories of unshakable faith.
Known for their unique style that blends tight family harmony with their acoustic instruments, the Isaacs, Lily, Ben, Sonia, and Rebecca, through their own trials, have encouraged millions through their faith in music. With 7 Dove Awards, several Grammy nominations, the Isaacs are frequent guests at the Grand Ole Opry and are popular artists on the Gaither Homecoming videos. This is their story of unshakable faith. This is today's life. Ben, I am so excited to sit down with you. Your name is floating around everywhere. Everyone loves you, and you're a musician, songwriter, producer. Thank you for sitting down with me.
It's an honor. It's an honor to be here.
You have quite a story. Now, you were working on your CD,
Nature Symphony.
Nature Symphony, and all of you had spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
And you're all going through some really tough situations in your life. And yours happened to be somebody in your family was dealing with addiction.
Right.
And you know, today's world, I mean, there's so many of people that are dealing with this. Can you share a little bit about your journey?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, I have a family member that I love with all of my heart that battles addiction. And addiction has affected nearly every home in America. You know, one of my sisters say, as performers, you know, people don't understand that you go through things as well, especially in the Christian world.
Right.
The only difference, I've heard Mark Lowry say this many, many times, the only difference between you, audience, and us as performers is tonight we're holding a microphone. Addiction has plagued this country, and my family member, I love to say it like this, they taught me who Jesus is through their addiction. Because to me it was a personal, I'm a really strong type A personality, therefore I have control issues. I know that. I'm trying not to be so in control all the time, and that's not easy, but I didn't realize it was a problem, my problem, until my family member was not choosing life. They were choosing addiction. And it was devastating to me because I couldn't control it. I couldn't control when they would drink. I couldn't control when they would stop. I got to the point where I was afraid to even leave the house, to go anywhere, because I thought I had that much control. When I was there, they weren't going to do it. And then it finally got to the point where it wasn't true. So I had to learn to be able to say, okay, God, help me to be able to just give it to you. That's why I say that's my family member taught me who Jesus is to me, because I had to learn, and I'm so grateful. As of July the 27th of this year, they celebrate 3 years of sobriety. And it's so incredible and so encouraging. And even to the point where, for me, it's like, you know, they said to me not long ago, and they come watch us play all the time, and I honestly, I share in front of people everywhere we go that no matter what you're going through, you know, sometimes when we pray for a problem, sometimes the situation changes. Sometimes our outlook on the situation changes, and it allows us to be able to focus more on Him and see what the purpose for the pain was or is. But my family member will come and watch us play, and they say to me, you know, why is that date so important to you? Why is my sobriety so important to you? I said, honestly, for almost 3 years now, I've been able to breathe. I'm not holding my breath wondering what's next for me. Because when you've lived with someone that don't mean to hurt you, but you choose to stay with them and fight through it with them, and it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Sometimes fighting through it is backing away and letting them make their own decisions.
You know, we've lost 2 people in our family too with addiction. Sometimes you just don't know what to do because it's so devastating.
Yeah.
You get them help and they go into rehab, they come out, they get back into, you're right, it's just like you're always wondering.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, you know, we lost our nephew and we lost a ex-daughter-in-law. And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
heartbreaking. You know, what would you say to somebody right now that's listening to you, and how would you encourage them?
I would have to say that the only way that you find peace in any of 3 scenarios, whether you are like me and you love someone who's battling an addiction, or maybe you're the person who beat it, or maybe you're still in it, the only way to find peace in that is you have to surrender your will to God and let Him fight your battle for you. Because I really, truly believe that He will. That's the only way that we made it through. Is, you know, I'm grateful that my family member chose sobriety. And I know that they give a lot of credit to God, but I also know, you know, we've had many conversations where they say to me, do you think I choose to be this way? You know, I've said many times, no, I don't think you choose to be this way, but I do think you choose the first drink or the first whatever once you've been sober. And that was the hard
battle.
That's the battle. So my hope is that you learn to really, really trust God. And if you give Him everything, including the praise and also the bad times, that He will truly help you through it. But you got to give it all, not just a little bit. You can't hold on to some of it and say, you know, I think maybe tomorrow I'll try this. It's got to be now and all the way.
Tell me where God has taken you now.
Personally, I'm busier than I've ever been. I stay in the studio all the time. Spiritually, I'm still on a high because of what God has brought me through. You know, I can go to somebody and say, okay, I never had a story before. I never did. I do. But I never had a testimony that was just like, okay, this is impactful. This has changed my life until fighting this and learning. And honestly, my whole testimony, I turn about me finding my way through type A. Because when you really think that you're in control, but you're not, or it's not a good place to be. I have a great friend that tells me all the time, says, Ben, she said, being in control, having control issues doesn't mean that it's always bad, because you just care more than everybody else. It's like, okay, well, I'll take that as someone who just has to be in it. So, you know, I mean, my happy place right now is everything in my life.
Sonia, tell me about all your awards that you've received.
You don't want to brag about stuff like that, so I'm just going to say to God be the glory for all that He's done. With the Isaacs, we've been lucky enough to be in different genres of music, so we've won some bluegrass awards, we've won some Southern Gospel awards, we've won it's about 7 Dove Awards. We've had the last 2 albums nominated for Grammys. And a lot of other nominations and things. We've had a blessed career, so I couldn't really be that more specific, but there are a lot of things the Lord has has blessed us with.
Now, what's it like to juggle everything? You know, all of you are busy, you have families, you have young kids.
I do.
And-
It's crazy good life. My husband and I got married when I was in my mid-30s, and so we started having children right away. And so we have 3 children. Their ages are 8, 3.5, and 2. So, and I don't mind telling people I'm 45 this week, and so
well, you don't look, and you look,
thank
you're
you.
beautiful.
Well, thank you. But I have more wisdom and patience at this age, but not so much energy. So it's a constant juggling
Now,
act.
do
My
they go on
husband-
the road with you?
They
or-
do. I have a nanny that travels full time, and also have one that helps me during the week. So the oldest one likes to stay home with my husband a lot because he's into sports and guy things. So they have that guy time when I have the babies out on the road. So we do that sometimes. But it's a wonderful life. It's an answered prayer. Everything.
You know, I talked to Ben, and I'm going to be talking to Becky after you. But you all have had struggles or, you know, trials in your life. And tell me about Ava.
Ava is my angel in heaven. In 2014, my husband and I already had Aiden. He was 3.5 already. And we've been trying for another child, and finally got pregnant. And when I was 6 months pregnant in October of 2014, I started hemorrhaging. Went into the emergency room, and the doctor came in with the ultrasound results about 2 o'clock one morning. And she sat down at the edge of our bed, and she said, "Mr. and Mrs. Yeary, I'm so sorry to tell you that your baby girl has passed away." It was obviously very devastating, hardest thing that we've ever been through. And I was already 40 years old, you know, so I had a lot of emotional dissecting to do, a lot of healing to do, a lot of fear that was the end, you know, fear to try again, all the fears. But the Lord was definitely gracious, and He was there holding me the whole time. And, you know, He gave me the grace to get through it, breath by breath. I had to give birth to her. It took me 12 hours of labor, and I got to have a beautiful funeral for her. But, you know, I know where she is, and I have a treasure in heaven that a lot of people don't have. And one day when I get home, she'll be waiting, and it's going to be amazing, that reunion. So I look at it as a treasure that God has allowed me to lay up in heaven for eternity.
Tell me a little bit more about your faith, you know, during that time, and even the younger years, and the challenges that you faced, and just what God has done in your life.
Well, I've always had very strong faith. I gave my heart to the Lord when I was 6 years old. You know, having parents that raise you in a Christian home is priceless. And so I grew up in a Christian home, and surrendered my life to the Lord when I understood what that meant when I was 6. And I just always lived for the Lord, and always had great faith. I was married when I was 20 years old the first time, and 7 years later went through a divorce. Didn't have any children, but I was, you know, it was a devastating time, and, you know, divorce is hard on everybody. And I really thought, because, golly, I just thought because I was already older that I would never have the family that I dreamed of, and I would never find a husband that I would be in love with enough to want to get married, and you know, at my age. And so for me to have met my husband, who is incredible, and to have a family with children, I mean, I'm just beyond blessed. God has been so faithful to me in spite of the challenges.
So when you went through the divorce, and it must be hard too, you know, you were probably already touring in your career.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we were.
And I know as a Christian author, it's difficult, because then you're thinking, oh, how could God use me? You know, I failed.
Yeah,
Did you ever go through any
yeah.
issues like that?
Sure, and my ex-husband, my husband at the time, was in ministry with us. He was playing along with the Isaacs, and so it was especially hard being in the, you know, in the eye of the public, going through a divorce.
'Cause everybody knew you were going through it.
Everybody knew it, and but you know, we're not the minority anymore.
No,
you know,
no.
and so there's life after divorce, and there's grace for divorce, and God is just, He's blessed me beyond anything that I ever could have deserved or ever imagined. And, you know, to God be the glory, because His hand reaches further than we can even see. And so I'm thankful for that.
Well, tell me a little bit more about your husband.
Jimmy?
Yes. Now, he's a songwriter.
He is. Jimmy Yeary is his name, Y-E-A-R-Y, and he writes country music, gospel music. He's one of the top writers in Nashville. He's written 6 #1 songs in country music in the last 10 years, many gospel #1s. He won an ACM and CMA award for a song he wrote called I Drive Your Truck, which is about a fallen soldier and his father who copes with the pain of losing his son by driving his truck around. And so that was an amazing thing a few years ago. So I'm very proud of him. He's a wonderful husband. He's a godsend. Everything that I put on my list, he is, and so much more. And God just truly answered my prayers.
How God does all that.
Yeah.
You know, if you had one thing to say to somebody that has lost a child, what would that be?
I would say trust God. Don't blame God, because a lot of times when we're hurt and we don't understand, we have a tendency to get angry and disconnect. And when you lose a child, you have to trust God's plan for your life, because He promised to work all things to the good of those that love Him. And so usually you will either trust or blame in that situation when fear and hurt is involved, and anger and pain. So I put my 100% trust in God, knowing that He knew what her life needed to be and what the complications in life may have been later on. So we don't know God's plans. We just see the little broken, jagged pieces. He sees the entire picture, the entire puzzle. So we just have to keep trusting Him and be faithful. Just be faithful and praise your way through the pain, because if we can praise God in those times when we're the most hurt, He is the most glorified.
I love that. Praise your
way through the pain, and He's faithful. I'm a perfect example of how God was faithful, because I was faithful to Him through it all, and I didn't stop praising and I didn't stop loving Him. So be faithful and keep trusting.
Becky, you all are so busy. You've been touring, you've been in the studio, you've been traveling. You know, take me back a little bit when you got involved in the group and what inspired you?
Well, you're exactly right. We have been super busy. I can't recall a time where we've been busier. It seems like in the last, 3 or 4 months, I've slept in my own bed about 6 nights. So it's been busy, and we're touring, and not only touring 3 and 4 days a week, but we're also making records and playing the Grand Ole Opry and doing different things that require midweek services. So it is a busy time, but we're blessed. I am 43, and so I started in the family as soon as I could talk, pretty much. When Mom and Dad discovered, which you may hear the same stories from all 3 of us, because we grew up in the same home. But by the time our parents discovered that we could sing, which was probably 3 and 4, we were in perfect harmony. And so I'm the baby. So my sister's a year older. My brother's 2 years older than Sonia, so he's 3 years older than me. And we were singing in full, perfect 3-part harmony by the time we were 3 and 4. And so as soon as they realized that we could sing, immediately we started filling positions. And by the time my sister was 9, she was on the guitar. By the time I was 11, I was playing mandolin, and then Sonia was on mandolin, and then by 11 I was on guitar, and Ben about 14 on the upright bass. And it's just been our life. We just
I've heard you, and I just love your music.
Thank you so
I do
much.
have to ask you this. What is it like to walk on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry?
It's very intimidating. When it's over, now everybody's experience is different, and you're going to find in this interview I'm a little bit more of an anxious person. So for me, it's when it's over that I was like, oh, that was awesome.
So do you really get nervous?
I do. I get nervous over every performance. It doesn't matter the crowd size, or it usually depends upon my environment for me. But yeah, I get very nervous. And so when the Grand Ole Opry is over, then I'm like, oh, that was awesome. But in the moment, it's all about, okay, do good, don't mess up.
But you have your family members around you.
I do, and that
so
helps.
it kind of gives you a little bit of
It really does. I would definitely not want to pursue a solo career like others. Unless God really made me do that. But it's comforting to have your family there and to know that they've got your back. And
well, you know, you went through a trial several years ago, and I think all of you have faced those trials in your life. But tell me a little bit about that.
well, I think that I'll start out by saying that the only difference between my family and whoever's watching is that we're actually behind the microphone. Our families live through the same thing that all the viewers are experiencing, and the pedestal that we're put on is sometimes just one of those things where they think that maybe we live in a different world, but the truth is that we all experience different things and can relate to them because we're all going through something. And for me, in the year of 2000, I woke up and everything in my body had begun to shut down. And I went from doctor to doctor, and finally I made it to the Mayo Clinic, where they then diagnosed me with a very rare form of Crohn's disease, because not only was my digestive system completely out of whack, but all of the nerve endings from my head to my feet were severely inflamed. And the doctor said I would probably go blind in both of my eyes by the time I lived to be older. And so I never really had just the basic Crohn's. It started in the small bowel, eventually going to the large bowel. And by the year of 2011, I had ulcers in the colon. I was on a chemotherapy injection for 6 years. I was on a Humira injections. I was on 20 different pills to stay alive. And I really didn't think I would live to see 40 or 50. So it was challenging all of those years. All the while we're traveling by plane and bus, 200 shows a year. And you know, that's definitely where you see God's faith. His grace is sufficient, because he always gave me what I needed to get on stage, but getting to that stage was the challenge for me every morning, getting out of bed and dealing with such a physical, my nerve endings would burn so bad. Like if I would get out of the shower, my skin would burn so bad for hours that I would almost have to just sponge bath 2 and 3 days at a time, because it wasn't worth the pain. Wow. And so on the year of 2011, I took a step of faith I've never taken before. And I found myself, after trying everything on the market, by the time I found this place in 2011, I was on the very last medication Mayo Clinic said was available for my condition. I found myself in a holistic clinic called Internal Balance in Brentwood, Tennessee. And it began a step of faith for me, because that's when I began to realize that, that there's more than one way to bake a cake. There's more than one way to get better. And in 2011 was the last, February 22nd of 2011 is the last day I took any medication for my condition. In the last 8 years, I've been walking in healing, which has become my testimony, because in John 9 we read of Jesus passing by a blind man, and he spits on the ground and he takes the clay and he puts it into the blind man's eyes, and he tells him to go to the pool and wash. And I love that story, because this blind man does receive a miracle. But it wasn't until I was desperate for God to heal my body that I realized that the moment that Jesus touched the blind man, he didn't receive his sight. You see, he had to walk by faith and not by sight. And nowhere in the Bible do we read how long it took the blind man to go from the temple gate where Jesus was to the pool. But commentaries have said that the closest pool from the temple gate where Jesus would have been and these miracles would have taken place was a half of a mile or longer. And so we know that the blind man walked by faith and not by sight. And so it became my theme in 2011 when I walked into this holistic clinic. I didn't get healed instantly. It's been a process for me over the past 8 years of regaining and taking back everything that had been taken from me. But I stand here 8 years later, 100% well, and no longer medically dependent. I can take normal showers. I'm the only one in my family that still has 20/20 vision. And I'm holding on to that. Age is starting to catch up. But I no longer have ulcers in the large bowel, the small bowel. I'm just walking in complete health and wholeness. And you know, the amazing part of that is all those years I developed such anxiety and forms of depression, but mostly anxiety, stage fright, because the medicines were just weighing so heavy on me. I was so fatigued all the time. And now in the past 8 years, I've just been walking in this whole new liberation and freedom of this is what life is all about, you know, and I'm really living life for the first time.
You know, I cannot wait to see what God is going to do for the rest of, you know, your career, and because you are just impacting so many lives. And I just want to thank you so much for being here and sharing your story.
Absolutely.
My friend, are you going through a trial in your life? And I want you to know that Jesus tells us that we will face many trials, but they are not to break us, but to empower us so that we can share our stories of unshakable faith with others that will give Him honor and glory. This is Today's Life. Thanks for watching.
Cornerstone Television wishes to thank all our faithful viewers whose consistent prayers and financial support have made this program possible.